without you questioning yourself on it.
Hey guys, what's up? ipenguinpat here, and today we're going to talk about space age Venus, also known as SAV, not to be confused with SAB. Those are way too close. They should have fixed that. Nevertheless, this came out about 2 weeks ago, and we have been getting a drip feed of information coming out about this. And before I get into the good, the bad, and the ugly about this age, I do want to say that you should come visit us on our Discord channel, or Discord server, I suppose it is. We do have a channel to talk about SAV, and we also talk about all kinds of other things. So come visit us. I'll put a link in the description below and probably in a pinned comment, although I can't promise you that. Nevertheless, come check out the Discord channel because there's lots of fascinating and hilarious talk and meme wars going on. All right, back to the good and the bad and the ugly of SAV. So as I was going down and looking to see what the space age Venus brings us, I was excited to see that we have 7 new expansions. That is good. One of those expansions is a metal expansion, which means that everybody gets to partake in the greatness of more real estate. Now, the next thing that I want to bring up is that this is just a beautiful age. As we looked at the spoiler channel and we saw all of the terrific screenshots of what we had coming up, it just looks awesome. Like, I really, really like the town hall. It's really nice, and that's about the only building that most people are going to have that's SAV in their city, and the rest are going to be special buildings. But the rest of the buildings, if you do build them, also do look nice. And the great building is absolutely gorgeous. It's terrible at this red hot second, but it is gorgeous. So we'll come back to that in a moment. And here is the outpost or the colony or whatever it's called. That's the town hall for that. So we just have a very cosmetically appealing age. And I do want to show you a live version of the city. Here you can see the animation on the town hall is very nice. It just looks badass. Here we have the artillery barrack, and I'll talk about the military more in a minute. And here is the great building, and that animation is super sweet. I totally wish that this was a better great building because of how awesome it looks. No more spoilers on that. We will get to that when we get to the bad. All right. So the next thing about this age that is fantastic is the units. I really like the balance that we have in the units. The one thing that a lot of people freaked out about when they saw it was the power shot on the artillery. And if you are familiar with railguns ended up having to get nerfed because they were overpowered from having power shot. And that's why they have that reload or recharge or whatever the hell it's called that makes them have to skip a turn. However, that was a very different scenario. It was a different age, different abilities between the units. And I don't think that we're going to end up seeing that same type of nerf with the power dragon that we saw with the railgun. Is this a strong unit? Absolutely it is. But one of the big things that was different in Future versus SAV is that SAV has a very legitimate, solid flying unit. This fast unit, the energy cannon, which is a really fucking weird name for a fast unit. But the energy cannon, which sounds like it should be an artillery, and the power dragon should be a flying unit. I don't know. I cannot tell you why they got those backwards, but they did. Nevertheless, the energy cannon, the fast unit that is not artillery, is a hard counter to power dragons. So it makes it so that that power shot isn't quite as strong. Now, it also makes it so that, especially if you are a battlegrounds fighter and you have a tendency to shop fights as you get to higher ages where you look for lots of artillery and fight with flying units, that's not going to be quite as effective because now those artillery units can shoot you down. But overall, as I look at these units, they all have some utility. The only unit that I think is a little bit lackluster, I'm not super in love with this heavy unit. I will say that it's going to end up being a nightmare, and it's going to be a bleeding unit because it has reactive armor. So from an attacking standpoint, it's not particularly helpful because it only has two range, which makes it very vulnerable. But that reactive armor is going to really slow down the fast unit. Now, I've heard really positive things about this observer drone, which is the light unit. A lot of people are saying that it's really underrated for what it is. and that it's going to be more popular than people think. I don't know, but I like the idea of having an age where most of the units are viable in some aspect. Progressive era was a very balanced age. Pretty much every unit was useful at some level, and that's kind of what we're seeing here. Now, I was also kind of excited on the ranged unit. I felt like it was going to be a nice, I don't know, I want to call it an upgrade from nail gun. Well, I guess it's an upgrade from nail guns, but I thought it would be a nail storm type of equivalent. But they kind of screwed it up because they gave it a little bit more movement and a little bit less range. And what the net effect ends up being is that this unit can't attack other units on the other side of the map first turn 100% of the time, and that really hurts it badly. It would have been a very, very strong counter to the artillery unit, and then it would also give a nice counter to the to this heavy unit if that was the case. But because it's not a sure thing that you can hit on the first turn, it really kind of puts it in no man's land. I don't think it's going to be a bad unit per se. It's kind of like a Tesla Walker where it's going to end up being underrated in the long run. It's still going to have utility, but it's just not that awesome. Yeah. One of the other things that I really like about this age is that it really kind of finally maybe sort of could put to rest hover tanks in all ages for GVG. I know that a lot of you don't care, but for those of us who do GVG, the fact that hover tanks are still a legitimate defensive army is really stupid. And by having the power dragons and the whatever, it doesn't, why is this cut off? It doesn't even make sense. But by having this ranged unit, it definitely puts a major dent in the footprint of hover tanks in all ages. And that is definitely a good thing. No unit that old should still be relevant in all ages. All right. So moving on to the next good thing is that the costs are reasonable. And I say reasonable because if you were to look back at SAV, that is Asteroid Belt, there was a very high requirement from the Marzor category. You needed a lot of Marzor. I think it was like 10,000 or something like that. So it really slowed down how fast you could move from SAM to SAB. And I don't know if that was an intentional thing or not, but I feel like this tiering of cost moving into SAV is a reasonable amount. I also will say that from a balance standpoint, it's very reasonable that if you have a level almost 60, we'll call it, level 50 plus space carrier, you will pretty much be able to move into this age without having to do anything crazy. Your space carrier will kind of cover most of the cost of this. So, maybe if you're moving up and you're just trying to rush through the ages, that won't do it for you. But for somebody who has been sitting in SAB for the whole time and they're ready to move up into SAV, this the space carrier kind of covered the cost for the special goods, and I think that's a positive thing. Here you can see the Orcalcum, or however you say it, Orich, and the Prometheum are both relatively low in cost, and I don't see that as being a big bottleneck for players, and I consider that to be a positive thing. It's very reasonable. So somebody did make a video of the recurring quest, and you can go through and watch and see what all the recurring quests are. And what that ends up showing us is that SAV essentially has identical recurring quest to SAB. Now, I put this in the category of good and bad. Okay. Actually, I put it in the category of good and ugly. So we'll get to ugly in a little bit. But I do love that we still have 2 of the Forge Point Spend recurring quest. I think that is very beneficial. It gives us a lot of opportunities for being able to get ourselves, I guess, caught up for goods. It lets people have their CF leveled up, be able to generate goods. And overall, I like having that as a mechanism. So, and the rest of these are pretty much your standard things. There is no unbirthday quest, which is unfortunate. With the way that scaling has happened, unbirthday quest isn't broken in these higher ages. And I think that it's a little bit disappointing that they didn't include it in this age. Now, you can kind of get around that a little bit by doing the gain population or by the collect a certain amount of coin and supply by building something and deleting it, build something and deleting it. But that's a little bit of a headache. So it's not as easy as just saying pay coins, pay supplies, accept the quest. Overall, I'm pretty happy on as far as how the recurring quests are. Moving on to the bad. So we basically have a copy of a bunch of previous ages. If you look at the recurring quest, they might as well be an exact copy of the SAB recurring quest. They're all the same. And you look at the units, and those are all very similar. We don't have any new mechanisms. We don't have any new fighting dynamics or anything like that. It's all pretty much the same. And you look at the settlement, and just across the board, we basically got some nice cosmetic upgrades, and we got maybe the end of hover tanks in all ages, and that's about it. And that's a little bit disappointing after 12 months of waiting. I do think that players would actually enjoy ages coming out in stages a little bit more. I remember that Virtual Future was a lot more fun when it came out in phases, and versus it all coming out at once and then having to wait a year to be let down over essentially a duplicate. At least in stages, we have something to look forward to, every 4 or 5 months or so. This is just kind of a lackluster improvement. Now, here's the problem, though. Here's the danger of us as players complaining about the fact that there's not really innovation or not anything new, is that occasionally when we do this, it leads to a gigantic screw up. I present to you the Flying Island. And I would like to propose a new name for this, the Flying Noob Trap. Someone from the forum suggested it, and I think that it is wildly appropriate for this building. This building is absolutely gorgeous, but the mechanics and the quality of this building are completely awful. And this is the second bad part of SAV. You see, they were trying to come up with something new and innovative and creative and clever, and they recycled too many ideas and put them all together at once, and it came out really bad. What we're looking at is basically a temple of relics for incidents in your cultural settlement. If that sounds really confusing, it is actually kind of confusing. You're basically dealing with a % chance of spawning a shard, an incident, in your settlement, and then you have a common, uncommon, and rare shard, which is just like the Temple of Relics. This is a very similar mechanism. This has a chance of going off once every 4 hours. So we have a lot less chances to go off over the course of a week compared to a Temple of Relics. So the rewards really should be pretty awesome, especially because this building cost, 900 of each of the newest age good. So that is a really astronomically high good expense. That's 4,500 goods required to build this building, and they are the highest age good. Okay, and then let's all, if we're going to talk about the forge point cost, it cost more than any other great building to level on top of that, right? So you would expect this building would be something spectacular. It should be. And what we see here is for our common shards, we have blueprints and metals. Oh wait, no, that's not the common. I'm sorry. That wasn't the common. The common shards. 20 forge points, that's good. 25 random goods, okay. 1 military unit? One military unit. Seriously? 2 blueprints? Coins and supplies? This is one of the however many chances I get to get something out of this extremely expensive great building, and I'm going to get this junk. The common shards need to be buffed. Moving on to the uncommon shards, we have what looks very similar to what we had with the Temple of Relics. Forge points, goods, some rogues. I do like the mass rush supply. That is nice for getting through events and stuff. Mass self-aid. We're kind of at a spot in the game where, especially advanced players with huge cities, we're not loading our cities up with shrines of knowledge anymore. We've got these bigger special buildings, and you just don't need quite as much aid. And if you're having a hard time getting enough self-aid, you just need more of a social life. That's really the problem. If you need a mass self-aid kit, just be more social, and I think you'll be okay. Now, the rare shards are the biggest disappointment of the bunch. Now, if we're talking about a rare shard, we are expecting this to be the best of the best. And instead, the brilliant people who designed this building thought it was a good idea to give us blueprints and medals. I'm trying not to curse. I was told I should not curse, but I feel like it because I think about the fact that I have an arc, and my arc makes it so that I can print blueprints like I run a printing press, and I can generate medals like I'm the freaking treasury. So those are literally the most useless rewards that you could possibly give to a player who would be building this building. 1-up kit, reno kit, store building, okay, fine. Good enough, I guess. But for a rare shard, that for a building that costs that many goods and that many forge points to level, it's just underwhelming. And then you have the mysterious shard, which is like a rare shard. I don't know why we need to have a rare shard, but apparently this is what it takes to make this building happen. And those really aren't all that like groundbreaking either. You know, like when I have these small, single digit chances of getting this type of shard, I would expect for it to be something spectacular. And this isn't spectacular. This is really pedestrian. And when you compare this with the Temple of Relics, which is what this is the most closely related to, the rewards aren't even close. The Temple of Relics is cheaper to level, cheaper to build, and hands down the rewards are better. I mean, they are hands down better. Having an option of Terrace Farm, the Sky Watches, those sell in the antique dealer, and then you can turn around and buy something useful. Okay, this you can't sell medals and blueprints in the antique dealer and make any use of it. That literally. This rare shard that I get is completely useless. I'm back in a ranting mood, recording an extra week later after I first started making this video. So I got to keep going. All right. So this building is so wildly unbalanced. I don't know what the deal is with this chance change going from 5.5% to 22% from level 10 to level 11. I assume that's a bug. I don't know if they've smoothed that out yet, but there's obviously something wrong there. That obviously should not be happening. And I don't know which part is the bug. I don't know whether this 5.5 is off or whether this 22% is off. But no matter what, there is something not right here. Now, I don't know whose idea all of this was, but I am going to say that it's the mole's idea. And there's got to be somebody who was just trying to ruin what is happening. And I would love to have the internal conversation for coming up with this building, because it is just so bad. I can't even imagine how that board meeting went. Hey, I have an idea. Let's do another Temple of Relics and let's do incidents. Yeah, that's a great idea. But wait, that's not interesting enough. Let's make them do it in the settlement. Yeah, that'll work. And then it doesn't do anything in the settlement. Yeah, they're going to be so excited. That's really groundbreaking. It's not groundbreaking. It's the same stupid stuff, except that you're making us jump through more hoops that are less reliable, less often, and giving us bigger pieces of junk. I'm sorry, but this is awful. And I'm not the only one that feels that way.
There's plenty of us that don't do settlements.
Yes. My wife has just pointed out there are plenty of players that don't do settlements. Now, I don't know. I mean, you could just have to have an active settlement, and that's all it takes. So you could just go in and collect the shards and ignore the fact that the settlement exists. But the bottom line is that the fact that it's interacts with the settlement is pointless. Just let us collect the stupid thing if that's what it's going to be, or let it be incidents in your main city, or I don't know. But this is trying way too hard. It's so try hard, and it's not innovative at all. It's just a headache, and that's really all it is. If it at least interacted with the settlements to make it so that people like my wife, who refuse to do the settlements because it takes so much freaking babysitting to make it worthwhile, if they made it so that it didn't take so much babysitting and it was actually, not a miserable process, then I could see the value in it. But no, it doesn't help that. And settlements are still miserable. And my wife still isn't going to do settlements. And this was a gigantic fail. So we have 26 pages, most of which are players complaining about how awful this building is. I'm not kidding. Please come to the beta forums, okay, and look at the feedback for the Space Age Venus and look through the feedback. And what you will find is like one thing about recurring quest and one thing about the units, and then 20 things about how bad this building is, and then one or two things people asking random questions because they aren't able to access this yet. And that's it. It's a lot of bitching about a really bad building. So let me explain to you why this is so bad. I realize that I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I actually would encourage you to register for the beta server and then register for the forums. That's 2 times that you have to register, but that's what it takes to leave feedback on beta. And let Inno know that this is not cool, okay? So Zuckerberg the Horrid, our fantastic player from Z World, I think, has done some calculations for us, and he has shown that here at level 65, we have the spectacular chance of getting about 13 forge points per day. And at level 76, you have a chance of getting about 14 forge points per day. Oh, and if you're in Aztec, okay, if you're in Aztec, it goes up a little bit. You're up to 25 a day. I mean, it's not like a level 25 cape can't do the same thing, right? I mean, I literally don't understand how they came up with these numbers, but there's no way that a building is worth 4,500 of the highest age goods and more forge points than any other great building to level to only be getting 25 forge points per day at level 76. This is dumb. But I'm not done. You wish I was done, but I'm not. To make matters worse, the spawn rate for the shards is not working correctly. That's right. On top of the fact that the rewards suck, the spawn rate is off. You see our friend here, he has said that he's been doing this for 20 days at a 28%, and he's gotten 11 shards. Last shard was about 48 hours ago. Now, if you have 6 chances in a day, you have a 20, we'll just say 25% chance. You should get 1.5 shards per day. He's gone 2 days with no shards. That tells you that something is off. And our friend down here crunched some numbers and said, hey, this is atrocious. Like, you got 11 shards and you should have gotten 33 shards in that same amount of time. This is off. This is wrong. And the worst part about it is that Inno is silent. Like, we don't even have anybody saying from Inno that, yes, we recognize that this is a bug. Now, there was actually a bug before where you couldn't even collect the shard. Okay, and they did acknowledge that, and apparently they fixed that. But that doesn't change the fact that now that you're collecting the shard that shows up 1/3 of the time that it's supposed to, it still sucks. Like, now, here's my fear. Here's my fear, people, is that we will have a repeat of the Virgo project. Now, I remember this because this was the first age that I was going to be ready to move up into that age when it came out. And I was pumped. I was excited that we were going to have some really awesome buildings. I had my CF leveled. I was going to sell a bunch of goods, and it was going to be awesome. And then we got these 2 bogus buildings. And the Virgo project has 18. They devoted an entire thread of feedback for the Virgo project and the Stargazer. And do you know what the majority of these 18 pages are? The majority of these 18 pages are people saying that the Virgo project sucks. A couple of people who said, this is going to make it so that my city defense doesn't help, and that's not fair. So what does Inno do? Inno nerfs the dang thing and makes it so that the Virgo project doesn't even work on your neighborhood, okay? So the one actual interesting use for it nerfed out of existence, and then the Virgo project exists as what I would say is the second worst great building in the game, only to be outdone by the Flying Island. The Flying Island will be the worst great building in the game because it cost so much to build, and you are going to end up deleting it because it's so bad, okay? And that means that you will have wasted that many resources, and it will never have paid for itself. At least with the Colosseum, it doesn't cost that much, right? You just delete it, and it's not that big a deal. Okay, so I have talked about the bad. Oh, all right, so I can't complain without giving a fix. And these ideas aren't all mine. Like, if you go to the feedback thread, players have given a ton of fantastic ideas of how to make this building not suck. Make it interact with the settlement so that it gives you rewards for the settlement so you complete the settlement faster. make it so that it gives you fragments of the little special buildings that you get from the settlements, so that at least those are useful. You can either sell them or you can build those little, whatever they are, the little 2x2 things that are better than shrines of knowledge. You could make it so that it produces goods for your guild. That would actually make this an amazing building, right? Like with the increasing cost of battlegrounds, we all need more goods for our treasury, or at least most of us. I don't know. Maybe you have more goods than everyone else, but as far as I'm concerned, everyone is looking for more goods for their treasury. And I think that players would be extremely happy if this building gave goods for the treasury. Or just buff the stuff from the shards, right? Like just make these things that they give us a little bit better. Like how about 200 forge points? How about 500 forge points? Like let's make it something so that somebody says, wow. And if you're worried about balance and you're like, well, it wouldn't be fair if an Iron Age player gets this building and then they can go nuts. Tell you what, put a second effect on it and give it a crap load of population, right? If you have a bunch of population on a building, early age players are not going to be able to keep their cities happy, and they're not going to build the building. It's an easy problem to fix. Do I have a ulterior motive because I like population? Yes, I do. But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't actually keep early age players from building this building. Or you could just make it so that it requires the player to collect the shards from their outpost. So they have to be in SAM or SAB or SAV, right? And then that just totally cuts out all of the early age players from using this building. I know they'll be really pissed at me, and I know that it will ruin my whole marketing of sales and stuff, and it will kill my good selling and a lot of other people's good selling prospects. But hey, at least you don't have to worry about the balance of it, right? At least then you could have a spectacular building and not worry about early age players somehow making 500 forge points a day when they're not supposed to. All right. So now that I have ranted about the bad, which is also ugly, let's move on to the ugly, like the true ugly. And the true ugly is the recurring quest. I mentioned that it kind of stinks that it was bad, and it kind of stinks that it's a repeat. But the really, really, really bad thing is that this bad boy right here still exists, right? And there's another one up here too, I think, right? And then this one here, these two quests should never have existed in the first place. When I did my review of SAB, I said these are wickedly, horribly abusable quests, and that people are going to abuse them. And at first that didn't happen. And then people figured out how to use macros, and they have started macroing these quests so that they can do literally thousands of fights a day just doing these two recurring quests. Heck, they only have to do one of them, and it's exploding their scores. If they do it right, they're actually completing the quest as well. So then they're generating an unlimited amount of goods, and they're doing it for nothing, right? These fights are not hard. They're not losing tons of units. A lot of the players that are doing these quests, they're decked out, right? They've got 1,500 attack and 1,000 defense, and they're not losing units. This isn't a big deal, right? So they have to do, like Inno, you have to do something about this, because this is literally breaking the game. It's breaking the scoring system. It's breaking the goods market. Everything about this is broken, and it is a design mechanism that should be closely reevaluated before going live. And it will be a extreme disappointment to those of us who like to play fair if this goes live as it is. So, I would say the final thing, and I already touched on it with the bad, and I kind of skipped around, is that the feedback and the communication from Inno as far as this age has been really lackluster. I will say that there have been a couple of things that we've sent to Inno and said, hey, this needs to change, and Inno has been responsive, and they've changed it. They fixed the delays for the abort. They brought the PvP tower back. Thank you. Those were both really, really good choices. But we have been providing feedback for 3 weeks, and we haven't heard anything from Inno saying, we understand that this building sucks and we're going to buff it, or we understand this building sucks and suck it. Like, we just don't know what it's going to be, but we're not getting any feedback, and we're not getting any signs that Inno even knows that we hate this building. I would encourage the developers, if you are listening to this, go and read the feedback. Like, your mods are doing their job, but if they say, well, I don't think the community likes this, versus saying, hey, the community thinks that you are purposely sabotaging the game because this is so bad. There's a very, very big difference in those two things. And I think that recognizing the difference of how bad the feedback is for this building might help you to understand that we would really appreciate as a community if you were to maybe reconsider this building and make it a little bit better. Okay, we'll leave it there like that. All right, so if you found this video interesting at all, if you laughed, if you cried, if you sweat blood, please like and subscribe, share this with your friends, come visit us on Discord, and I will catch you in the next video.